Okay. So this video isn't to say, oh, don't go smoke weed. Don't don't do what you want to do, but it's more for educational purposes on the effects of weed on teens' brains. So weed affects the developing brain in different ways. Long-term use of cannabis as a teen can lead to memory loss, which will make it harder to remember stuff for school. So inside your brain, the part that retains memory, when you smoke weed, do edibles, whatever it is, um, the effects of THC actually mess with that part of your brain that retains memory. So it makes it harder for you to retain stuff that people want you to do, or stuff that you learn in school, which doesn't really help you in the long run. It also reduces your your attention span and your focus, so you won't really be able to focus on things as much. So, an example, like if you're in class, and you're sitting there learning about history, you might be listening very intensely for 5 or 10 minutes, and then your brain will kind of wander and think like, oh, what am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to do after school, etc., etc. Also, these effects are long-term effects. Cannabis also reduces motivation. Um, so you won't feel as motivated to get out of bed and go to school, to do chores, to clean your room. Anything that isn't pleasureful for you, I guess I would say, you most likely will not end up doing it. A lot of times weed will make you lose touch with friends and lose interest in hobbies, because of a reduced motivation. And this this won't this isn't a direct effect of like this doesn't directly affect your brain, but it won't really help you out in the long run either. Um, Smoking weed or using cannabis also oftentimes gives people low self-confidence, and this kind of makes it harder for people to deal with everyday stress, such as being late for school, being late for sports, not having homework done, etc., etc. This inability to deal with the stress can also lead to anxiety and depression. Um, all of these effects are multiplied and so much worse. Just like no one understands how much worse it is unless they see people that they knew when they were younger versus older after they smoked weed while their brain was developing. The effects are way worse if you use cannabis while your brain is developing. So what happens to the brain when you're high on weed? So your brain does not function properly, which is why you only think of something, and that thing is the most important thing on your mind. So you can't think bigger picture. So, for example, I use cannabis. There's receptors in my brain, and CBD, like the cannabinoids, which are these little receptors in your brain. They they will work, and then they'll have a little break time to make sure that your brain doesn't overwork. So that stuff like this doesn't happen. But when you use THC, this stops. So your brain will send signals and send signals and send signals. So the one thing that you're thinking about will become the most important thing for you to think about. It'll be the most important thing that your brain wants you to think about. So say, for example, I'm thinking about cats. All I'll think about is like a black cat, and like how they purr, and all the stuff about cats until something else takes over and the process repeats itself. Um, Smoking weed or using cannabis, using THC, increases the amount of dopamine in your brain, and dopamine is naturally produced by the brain. It's kind of like the brain's reward system. Um, and this doesn't this doesn't hurt when it's naturally produced, but if your brain starts getting higher doses of it, like when you use cannabis with THC, your brain can start to develop a dependency on this reward system. A lot of times it will give you a more euphoric feeling, and you'll feel more relaxed, and your senses will be heightened. Your vision will, your focus, your focus and your vision will be more intense, but it can also cause anxiety. So a lot of the risk patterns for use in teens, I'll list them off and then I'll go into deeper explanation. So peer pressure, social media promotion and influence, rebellion, self-medication, and family influence. So peer pressure is something that teens deal with every day. No one wants to be an outsider. Everyone feels like they have to belong to a certain group. So let's use me in this example. So an example, I'm with 5 friends and we're at a party and they're outside and they're smoking a joint. If I'm with my 5 friends and they're passing it around, and I say no, I would feel like I didn't belong. I wouldn't feel like one of them. And that's something that a lot of teens really don't want to feel. They don't want to feel excluded or kind of feel like an outsider. That everyone in their teen years especially wants to feel like they belong. Social media promotion and influence, I think, is a big thing, because if you're looking up to, for example, Kanye West. Let's say Kanye West, I'm a die-hard Kanye West fan, and I listen to all his music, go to all his shows, follow his Instagram. I know everything about Kanye West, and I really look up to him. And let's say he starts smoking weed, I would want to be like him. So that might make me want to start smoking weed, or if people talk about, oh, like, this was so good, this was so much fun, remember when whatever happened, that might make me want to start smoking weed as well. Another thing is rebellion, which is very common in teens. I went through my rebellious stage, and if someone said, okay, for example, my mom, I'm in the kitchen and she goes, that chocolate bar right there, don't eat that chocolate bar. All that I'm going to think about all day is eating that chocolate bar. And there's nothing I can do about it. It's because it's the fact that I can't have it. I just want it so much more. So lots of parents will tell their kids, yeah, don't smoke, don't drink, no going to parties. And that'll just make them want to do it so much more. So if you have more an open conversation about it, and you're not telling them, no, don't do it, then they will not have this dying need to do something that they're not supposed to do. If you teach them about it rather than say don't do it, they're more likely to not do it. Self-medication. So a lot of teens deal with stress in high school because there's pressure to do good in school, pressure to hang out with certain people, pressure to be a good friend, pressure from relationships, pressure from sports, and a lot of people can't deal with the stress, or not can't deal with it, but deal with it worse than others. And when someone smokes weed, or uses cannabis, they will not have that stress on their mind. They will lose the stress that they have, and this self-medication can oftentimes lead to a dependency, which will lead to an everyday thing, which can turn into worse things. So family influence is another huge factor as well, as is who you hang out with socially. If in my family, my dad drank 10 cups of coffee a day, and I saw that for a big part of my life. I would think that it's okay to drink 10 coffee cups a day. And then I would go out into the real world, and I wouldn't see other people drinking coffee cups, but I would do it, and I would think, hey, that's okay, because that's what I grew up around. And the same thing goes towards substance use. So that also has a very huge influence on a teen's use of cannabis. So there are also consequences of chronic use, and it becomes a bad habit, and they lose interest in things they used to like. So a lot of people will smoke weed or use cannabis once a month. For example, let's say once a month, and then it turns to once every 2 weeks, and then once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, every day, twice a day, 3 times a day. And smoking weed will start to become the thing. They will lose interest in things they used to like going on walks with friends, going to movies, going on bike rides, playing video games. No matter what it is, they'll also kind of retract. They'll want to stay home, just be high and sit on a couch and eat a bag of potato chips, rather than go out and do things that they used to enjoy doing. A loss of priorities is also a big thing as well. So this can be with school or socially. A lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes people they'll smoke or they'll use cannabis, and they'll stop thinking about how they're going to do on their test, or how their friends are doing, or what they're going to do after school, or what other big things they have coming up in life. They'll think like, oh, when's the next time I can smoke? When's the next time I can just hang out and be high? And this can cause a drastic drop in grades, because grades are not one of their main focuses, which it should be. And this will also have them retract from their friends, and they'll start to lose friends, which can turn into a vicious cycle. They'll also lose good stress. So cannabis is a good stress reliever. But in life, there's bad stress and there's good stress. A good stress, for example, if I have a test in 5 days, and I'm really, really stressed about this test, the stress might motivate me to study, and when I study, I will feel more prepared for the test, and I will have learned more. So my stress will go down, and my work quality will go up. And in turn, I will be prepared for the test and get a good grade. It is oftentimes the opposite effect when you use cannabis. So if I'm very stressed about a test, I'll use cannabis. This is an example, by the way. If I was stressed for a test, I would use cannabis, and then lose. It's driving me crazy. Where was I? Yeah, sorry. So the loss of good stress. So if I'm stressed, I might use cannabis, which would make my stress levels go down. But in turn, I would not study for the test. So I wouldn't be prepared for the test, which would make me get bad grades. And if this becomes a pattern, this could lead to me saying, well, I don't think I can recover from this, so I might drop out of the class. And then it becomes 1 class, then 2 or 3, and then it can lead to me dropping out of school. So poor life choices is another big one. I'm not saying, oh, all people that smoke weed are terrible people. I've got friends that smoke weed, they're doing good in school, and it doesn't matter. But a lot of times, people that do smoke weed in high school at a younger age are considered part of the bad crowd. And if I habitually start hanging out with a bad crowd, they may get into more trouble than others. For example, I go into high school having friends, and all we do is like play sports and play video games, whatever. And then kind of in high school, I transitioned between the two friend groups, and I started smoking weed. Then I would kind of, they would think, my original friend group that liked to play sports, they would think that was really bad, so I'd kind of be an outsider for them, but I would be more of an insider for the group that smoked weed. And that bad group could lead me down a worse path. So if one of them started selling weed or other illicit drugs, I could see, hey, they're making money, and that might make me want to go, well, I want to do that, and that could lead to even worse poor choices down the road. So all in all, like, at the end of this, I'm not saying don't smoke weed, like, do whatever you want, like, it's your life, you make these choices. Just understand how it can affect you down the road, and take responsibility for your actions. Don't blame it on anybody else, because at the end of the day, you're the only one who controls your actions, and that in turn controls the outcome of life.